All right, everyone, welcome into episode 46. And officially, I believe now, 1 year into two countries, two Americas, all sports. And I am hearing all kinds of noise in my ears. Cuss, cuss, cuss.
I had to start with this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to definitely get way more into that. The thing about we should have had brought in cigars for this episode, right? But I'm just gonna have a fake one, um, because the Vols finally beat Alabama. Can you believe it? Um, yeah,
No,
we're gonna get way more into that here in just a moment. But first, Gus, I know you want to talk about something that's not sports related. That's going on in Brazil. Just kind of explain it to the audience if they're not aware of what's going on and why it's weighing on you so heavily.
first of all, hey Nick, how's it going? And great to be here with you on our official first year anniversary of our podcast. A year ago, we had our first episode. Now we're episode 46.
Right,
Guys,
and it's crazy as we went from the first episode was about the mustard bottle incident to Ole Miss, and now a year later we just beat Alabama.
yeah, how things, I feel like it always, special episodes when we turn this mid October. So, but first, I want to give a statement about censorship, freedom of expression, freedom of speech here in Brazil. That I believe personally, that's Gustavo Tomazeli opinion. That has been in a little bit danger. This week, Jovem Pan, which is a now it's a conglomerate. It used to be only a radio station, but now they have a TV station, really big YouTube channel, one of the largest news YouTube news channels in the world with heights of like 6 million subscribers. They got censored this week by the Superior Electoral Tribunal, which is the court that oversees elections, from the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who decided on behalf of the Labour Party that Jovem Pan and their journalists and panelists and hosts couldn't mention certain terms like Lula is a convict or a former convict or thief or that he was he went to jail, that he's a crook, you know, those terms, they couldn't use of possibly facing fines up to 100,000 reais, or even they could lose their license to broadcast. I believe this is censorship for me. When the military dictatorship ended in the mid 80s, I thought those days were over. That days that broadcasters and journalists will have to be worried about what they say or who they talk about. They were over, but I guess they're not. We're coming back. We went backwards in time, and I believe this is it makes me very worried as a journalist, as somebody that went to school for journalism, that graduated in journalism here in Brazil, that also lived in America for 7 years, and I know how important freedom of expression, freedom of speech is, and that's my opening statement. I know it's non-political, but our podcast talk about Brazil and America topics. I know we're gonna have a lot of joy in talk about sports, but as a journalist, I had to start with my statement, especially in English for a lot of audience that don't speak Portuguese and probably are not aware of what's happening in Brazil.
Absolutely, man. That's important, and that's really one of the tenets. We're talking about creating this 1 year ago. We had tried a previous podcast, but we weren't allowed to go like into a political direction with it if we needed to. And obviously we don't if we don't go out of our way to get into political issues. But clearly, in your country, you're about to have a major election. In America, we're about to have midterms, right? So we're both going through significant changes in power potentially, and I mean, just reading an article on this from Reuters, it, that's it's kind of crazy. So basically, from what I understand, they're basically trying to prevent both sides from saying anything derogatory about the other side, which it sounds more like they're treating everyone like they're in kindergarten versus rational functioning adults.
Yes, yes, but it's, in my opinion, one side, because I don't see any action from the same court, with like left wing media outlets. That's what makes me angry. And if there were any actions with those media outlets, I would be defending them, even though I don't necessarily agree with their position. I wholeheartedly defend freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and opinions. And the crazy thing is like the court admits, okay, a lot of the facts that people on Jovem Pan points out are true, but they're giving a false sense of, or a very narrow vision, or a very blurry vision of the reality. But politics is about that. Politics is about spinning facts the way that you want to present, either to promote your candidate or to bash the opponent. That's politics. That's democracy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think all politics should be, you take the facts and like, okay, this is why this is a good thing or this is a bad thing, and why we should either continue it or go in a different direction, right? And that's always been politics, it always will be politics, and clearly, if you're going to have a functioning enough democracy, right, you have to allow those to be able to interact with each other and see that. And that's kind of one of our problems in the U.S., right? Like we are polarized. We start to get into our own bubbles. A lot of people don't know a lot of other people on the other side, and it really causes us to feel like the country's falling apart when really, a lot of us all just want the same things, right? We want to be safe. We want to have economic opportunity, and we want to all be healthy, right? Like that's the long term goals of most people and what they want to see in their societies. We just all have different ideas and how to do it. So clearly, I'm with you, Gus. I hope that things switch soon up in Brazil. I'm not sure exactly how that would have to change because
I,
I'm not
I,
as
I
familiar with the
yeah,
government
I
structure.
mean, yeah, I'm, as I said that, of course, probably when this election is over, things were, go back to some sort of opening discussion, and I feel like that would give a sense of back to normal. But what worries me is the precedent. What comes next, and it's the topic. And I know I'm getting way too much into this. I know it will be an hour discussion about the things that went before that and the actions of the court, and but that's my expression. I'm glad you're you know and I'm happy that you feel, and I know as a journalist, as in an American, you support freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and I want to start the show with that.
Yeah.
Eh,
Like
So
I literally
now
had to
that
cover government officials today, so like I totally understand that, although on a much smaller scale than that. So no offense to the local officials here in the Tennessee Valley, but
well,
that's
that's
just
really important. That's really important. Local politics are, and I always talk about how local politics are very important. I'm being kind of covering not as much as you, but I always try to cover as much as possible. City council here, always talking with local politics here, and I know how important local politics, because I feel like local politics affect people way more than national. I feel like national politics is
Mhm.
about feelings and beliefs. Local politics is about what affect people, like the street that you drive, the sidewalk that you walk, the light that you turn on. Those are local politics things. Even you know uh, those kind of things. So very important. And shout out to my dad in Florida, Nokomis, Florida. Praising us. He's okay, by the way, Nick. He had some minor damage because of the Hurricane Ian, but they're fine. I also,
That's
I
awesome.
wanna, send my thoughts to my brother Eduardo Tomazeli, tested positive for the virus, and I
Uh,
hope he gets a good recovery.
yeah, flu. Flu is actually is actually kind of on a kick up too. So it's not just COVID going around. There's also the flu. It's like actually really bad down here in the South, South part of the United States. So it's that time of the year. I personally have gotten my COVID and flu shots. Not forced, not saying everyone should be forced to, but I would encourage you, if you haven't, to go get your COVID and flu shots.
But with those discussions out of the way, let's talk about you know the moment in history that will always lived in East Tennessee, and especially of all the Vol fans, because I as somebody, you're more Vol fan than I do, because I was kind of an outsider. I lived in Knoxville for 7 years. I covered the Vols, but you've been your whole life. I imagine what went through your mind when the field goal was traveling, from the ground to the goalpost.
So I definitely have to preface this. I'm about to sound like Stephen A. Smith here. Of how how like he starts off with a story right before he gets to his point. So I've been watching Tennessee football pretty consistently since 2006. I was 8 years old. And so happens before Saturday, that was the last year Tennessee beat Alabama. I remember that game was a low scoring game. The Vols won 16-13. It was a good game. I didn't realize that it would be so long. I didn't realize I would have my first real major job, that I would already be graduated from college. And in the same weekend that we would beat Alabama again, I would literally interview a big time gubernatorial candidate in Georgia. It's just crazy to think. Between the times that we beat Alabama, how much has changed. I mean, literally when we beat Alabama, Facebook hadn't been invented. The iPhone hadn't been invented. I was playing games on the original Xbox, like that. I mean, it's really insane to think about just how long ago 2006 was. And then Bama goes out, they hire Nick Saban, and for 15 straight years, year after year after year, we just couldn't beat the Tide. We came close a few times. 2009, we drove down into their territory. Just like Saturday, we had a field goal attempt. It was blocked, though. I remember that was probably one of the most heartbreaking losses ever. 2015, we go on a drive with Josh Dobbs and Jalen Hurd. We take the lead 14-13, but Derrick Henry comes back and breaks my heart. Thankfully, he's made it up to me as a Titan. Bama wins 19-14. But besides those 2 years, pretty much every other year was a beatdown. We were losing on average by I think they said it was like 26 points per game that we were losing by, was the average margin of victory for Alabama. And if you take out those 2 games I had mentioned, it's probably more like 30 or 40. It was just an automatic L anytime you looked at it on the schedule, and it was just so depressing. And I think really, especially when I got to school, and we weren't even close to Bama. And then sitting there at the end of every single game and having to smell all of the cigar smoke from the Bama fans, it was hard. And then especially, too, living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we're not very far from Northeast Alabama. So there's a lot of Alabama fans in the Chattanooga area. So I had to hear about it every single year at school. Had to just constantly get all kinds of trash talk from Bama fans, and I never could come back. Same with Florida. Because I was 18 the first time I saw us beat Florida in 2016. Saturday, and obviously we were actually live last year when the Braves won the World Series, right? We experienced that moment together. And that obviously, a championship is a championship, and nothing technically really tops that. But that might have been the most magical moment of my sports life as a sports fan. Saturday night, right up there, obviously, with the Jennings Hail Mary in 2016. I was at a band competition, and I was getting ready to do the award ceremony. And literally, we were watching the end, and literally, we ran off the buses. We were changing it into our band uniforms, and that band next door, they were also celebrating, and we were just it was nuts. And we go out there onto the field, and we actually ended up winning the competition that day. But so that's obviously a favorite memory of mine. But Alabama has been the gold standard of college football. They have been the Death Star. My brother, he big in the video games, he said, Tennessee's been really good, but you have to beat the final boss of college football, Alabama. You're 0-15 against Nick Saban heading into Saturday. They have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. They have the most electrifying running back in college football. Allegedly, they have the number 1 draft pick in Will Anderson on their line. And Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Josh Heupel, and the rest of those volunteers went out there and performed the game of their lives. I mean, where do you start with this? Obviously Jalen Hyatt, right? 6 catches, 207, 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns. School record, SEC record. One of the most legendary performances in Tennessee history. I mean, it's probably the best single performance by any individual player in a Tennessee game. And the Hooker, obviously, was just balling. He was putting all the passes where they needed to be, letting Hyatt do his thing. And I think has solidified himself as a Heisman front runner by bar none. But here's the thing, and obviously we've been thinking about Hooker and Hyatt, right, in the passing attack. And that was instrumental. But 2 things here that I think really helped us on offense. 1, the offensive line, spectacular performance. Only 1 sack. And Will Anderson, he was a ghost. He was really getting into spooky season here in October because he was invisible. I didn't see him. Where was number 31 for Alabama? Didn't see him. You can thank Darnell Wright and the rest of the offensive line for an amazing performance. And 2, we ran for 182 yards. And Jalen Wright in that last main drive that we had to tie it up, phenomenal in that drive. Had several really, really good runs. Jabari Small had some really good players earlier on in the game that really helped us move the ball down the field and set up some of those Hooker to Hyatt connections. On the other side of the ball, now obviously, pass defense wasn't very good. Our depth there is just not good. It's going to be the weakness of this team. I don't really blame the coaches here. It's just, we got to get depth there. We have to remember 20 months ago, the program was effectively dead, right? Like we thought that I thought when I was sitting up there in that booth against Texas A&M and Trey Wallace had dropped that report about the McDonald's bags, that Tennessee football was done for 5 years. That there's no way they could even be remotely competitive in the next 3 years. And now they're number 3 in the country, and they just beat Alabama.
And to that point, Nick, and credit where credit is due, the hiring of Danny and Josh.
Danny, yep.
I feel like more Danny because Tennessee. I feel like hiring an athletic director that had experience with turning around programs was important because the way the athletic department ended on that that was one of the most sad, depressing press conference I feel like VOLS fans were ever seen. I feel like because the Lane Kiffin press conference was shocking, but that one, people were angry and betrayed, but that one was depressing. That one, it was not the death of a football program, was a cardiac arrest. The it was like I feel like the patient went to like the coma. Not only the football department, but the entire the big part of the athletic department because the athletic director had to retire. Phil, and it was Philip Fulmer was a legend, and he had to.
And think about it, like it really can trace all the way back to Schiano Sunday, right? Like we were about to hire Greg Schiano, the whole school protest. I was in the protest crowd, I will admit. And, we thought that maybe, we had saved the program at that point, but really we had just prolonged the suffering, right? Going to Pruitt, and it just never worked out. Really, I think the lowest moment for me, even with all that, was probably Georgia State, 2019, right? Like losing that game, to me, I went back and watched some of our previous coverage. I watched our coverage after we lost to Kentucky 2 years ago, 34-7. I watched our coverage after we hired Heupel. I went back and listened to what I said. And I believe in the Heupel conference, I said that, no, it was Kentucky, that I said that our program was no longer elite, that you can't be losing to teams like Georgia State, to BYU, getting blown out at home by Kentucky 34-7, and expecting to be a top tier program, expecting to compete for championships, and that we had to recalibrate our expectations because that was unlikely to change anytime soon because we had been too bad for too long to come back. That's effectively what I said. And, when we hired Heupel, I said, I like his offense. I mean, we're going to put up some numbers, but it's going to take us a while to truly be competitive. And we're going to have to give him a long time. And chances are, it's gonna he may not be able to truly get us back to the top just because I think so much damage had been done to the program that we weren't going to come back. Like this to me is one of the greatest sports miracles of all time. Like this was not supposed to happen for Tennessee. Not with where we were, not with everything that had transpired, not with the competition that we had just that we have to deal with on a year in, year out basis. We have to play Alabama every year, got to play Georgia every year, got to play Florida every year. And yet, the miracle worker that is Josh Heupel, bringing in Hendon Hooker, and just getting this team to believe. You know how many 5-stars are on this roster right now? There are 2. There are 2 5-stars on this team right now, Darnell Wright and Brew McCoy. Really just one that we've had since he was a freshman. You aren't supposed to be number 3 in the country with that.
And it's interesting comparison. 2008 was Saban's second season, right?
Right.
He went 12 in the regular season. He also beat a number 3 team in the country. He was on the road, but he beat a number 3 team, Georgia. I mean, just saying, he. He also took. I feel like Josh Heupel turnaround. I don't want to compare it. I know Nick Saban is a legend, but Josh Heupel had way more to rebuild than Saban did.
Right. Also, I do want to just briefly mention I have Yankees Astros here in the background game to LCS. Astros just hit a 3-run bomb to take a 3-0 lead in the bottom of the 3rd inning. They actually are going to the 4th now in Houston. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Alabama. I have people talk about like the dark ages of the 2000s. If you look at their quote unquote dark ages, you'll see a lot of SEC titles in there. They weren't really winning national titles, but they were winning 10 plus games every couple of years. Those were bad times at Alabama. Alabama has never truly been through what Tennessee has been through. I mean, we were going through years and years at a time, not going to a bowl game, from like what? From the beginning of this whole situation. So 08, we missed a bowl game. 09 we go. 10 we go. 11, 12, 13, 3 straight years we don't go to a bowl game. 14 we do. 15, 16 we do. But then 17 and 18 we don't. 19 we do. 20 COVID. And now we're back in. Obviously, we're going to a bowl this year. We're already at 6 wins.
Even COVID years, in terms of the standings, Tennessee did not earn the right to be in the bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, we were a horrible program in the 2010s, and up until now. And obviously, in terms of are we truly back for this team? Absolutely, but it'll definitely be interesting to see if we can sustain the success. Is it more the scheme or is it more Hendon Hooker? Because Hendon Hooker, I truly think he has the potential to go down as the greatest quarterback in Tennessee history. It depends on how the rest of the season goes. If he can beat Georgia, if he can win the SEC title. But it's right there for him. Everyone talks about how Peyton Manning's the GOAT, but Peyton Manning came in at a time where Tennessee was very competitive. They had won multiple SEC titles in the previous decade. And yeah, he took him to the next level. Hendon Hooker has come in and taken us from absolute irrelevance to the top 5. And obviously it's not just Hendon Hooker, right? I mean, you got to credit all the receivers, the running backs, the linemen. But, obviously it starts with your quarterback. We see what bad quarterback play can do when it's bad. And when we were there, we saw horrible quarterback play and how it handicapped Tennessee for years. But now we now have amazing quarterback play and we see what Tennessee now can do. And you're not going to have that type of quarterback every single year. Now, I'm excited about the future of the position. Like, I think Joe Milton next year could be really, really good. Obviously, Nico Amiolevia has the potential to be special himself, but I mean, he's still in high school, right? We don't know how he's going to develop when he gets to Rocky Top. And we still have Javen Jackson, who's on the team. Could he develop into something? And of course, I trust Josh Heupel of any quarterback. I mean, this guy made Drew Lock an NFL quarterback. Don't forget that. So, I don't know. And obviously, I feel like we're talking so much to the Vols. We got to talk about Bama at some point. But, oh, yeah. I was going to talk about the defense real quick. Obviously, pass defense wasn't great. But the run defense, I feel like actually was pretty good in this game. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs got some nice runs. But we only held him to 104 yards and like 4 yards of carry. That's not bad against him. That's a really, really good running back. And we kind of made it to where Bryce Young had to beat us. Now, Bryce Young almost did. And he really should have, right? Like, his kickers kind of screwed him. The time mismanagement at the end screwed him. But Bryce Young played a game worthy of winning. Like, Bryce Young did not lose that game for Alabama. Like, you can see why he's a Heisman winner. And to me, that game has convinced me that I think he could be a true NFL star. Like, I think Bryce Young, if you think about it, he doesn't have, I think, really any elite NFL receivers on that team right now. I think his best weapon outside of Jahmyr Gibbs is that tight end Lutu. But Bryce Young still was amazing. Like, he is a magician too. Like, both of these quarterbacks were magicians, and honestly, probably one of the greatest quarterback duels in college football history. Like, I doubt we'll see many quarterback battles in college football better than that. Like, ever. I mean, you had Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes from a couple of years ago, but go ahead.
And I feel like the way Alabama came back was I feel like was expected. Tennessee had like a 20-point lead, 18-point lead, and then Bama came back, and Hendon Hooker, he deserves to be definitely in the Heisman conversation. Definitely, the way he performed on that game, and he earned to be in the quarterback power rankings, on the top 3, and probably maybe tied with C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. I would put ahead Bryce Young because of the match, Hendon beat him.
Yeah, I mean, both of those quarterbacks were definitely top 3. And obviously C.J. Stroud too. That dude is amazing too. I'm very interested to see now with C.J. Stroud, because I feel like with the NFL draft scouts, right? Because they keep on saying, "Oh, he's too old. He's too old." But you can't sit there and watch him and be like, "Okay, he's only going to be 25 when he enters the league. If you can get 10 years at least with him, why wouldn't you take him high? That guy can make every throw."
It's the most absurd. Oh, he's old. Like, don't you want to have a mature quarterback, a rookie that feels experienced? Is that the dream scenario? To have a rookie that has the maturity and the talent of Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like quarterbacks aren't playing forever now. I mean, look at Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Those two are playing, and they're playing deep into January at old ages. Like, Hendon Hooker could play for a very long time in the league. So I just don't understand that. Both of those guys are NFL guys, easily. But we got to talk about a bit of the ugly for Alabama too, right? It's not just Tennessee beating Bama. I think that if I were an Alabama fan, there are some serious, serious alarm bells about the current state of your football program. Now, obviously, Alabama isn't bad. They're still a top 10 team. They're still a top 10 program. They've got probably the best talent in the entire country. So, explain to me, with all of those advantages that you have, all that championship experience that you have, why are you committing 17 penalties in one game? Why do you have guys trying to pick up punts that were obviously dead? Why do you not run out the clock when you're in field goal range at the end and give us, with the best offense in the country, time to go back down the field and beat you? What is going on with Nick Saban in Alabama?
I mean, credit where credit is due. Tennessee, uh, pressure on special teams, especially on punt returns. That's impressive. Back to back games where you score after recovering the ball. After you punt.
Yeah, I mean the seven maximums right there. Press the kicking game. This is where the breaks are made, and we've made breaks in that game. So credit to us for sure. But man, 17 penalties, and like there was times that they were chaining those together, like 3, 4 at a time. And I think part of it, and they've had and Nick Saban and Will Anderson admitted this, was the crowd. I mean, we haven't talked about this yet, but the atmosphere inside of Neyland Stadium was the best I've ever seen. Not just at Neyland Stadium, but maybe in sports. At least definitely in college football. I mean, obviously, I know there's some soccer crowds that are insane, but I think this rivaled anything that we. This could compare to anything that we see anywhere in any sport.
That's why I had a. That's why when I debate a lot of friends of mine that love American sports, and I told them, please watch college football. College football is the greatest league in America. Sorry. I know a lot of people in Brazil, fall in love with the NFL and they're used to watching pros. But like if people in Brazil knew how college football and Brazilian soccer are similar, I even say how connected they are in terms of passion, atmosphere, rivalries, and competitiveness, even super teams, or I feel like college football right now, at least for me, I guess, because we both live in the South, probably people in America. I used to live, and now you live in the Southeast in America. Tend to be more into the sport because of how many good football programs and how the rivalries build. But I feel like right now college football is way more interesting than the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about a bit about this later. How the NFL has been honestly kind of disappointing this year with some of their primetime games and just the quality of the product. But college football has easily so far been more entertaining this year, even without Tennessee. I mean, I think about the crazy something like think about North Carolina Appalachian State week one, 63-61 in regulation. We had that Alabama Texas or Alabama Texas A&M games were both incredible. You have had so many insane games. I mean, even just this past weekend, USC Utah. A couple weeks ago, you had Clemson Wake Forest. There, Florida State LSU. So many insane games this year across the country that have really been more exciting than anything we've seen from the NFL this year. I mean, it's been just phenomenal, phenomenal theater uh, for Tennessee. And on the atmosphere, I want to kind of bring up a quote from Nick Saban. I got to pull this up real quick because this is I've never heard Alabama say that they're scared before. Um, so Nick Saban said this quote, I thought we were tight, especially starting the game. I mean, coming out of the locker room, our players always chant. They weren't chanting. I said, why aren't you guys chanting? What's up with that? Will Anderson's also stated that the guys had a lot of anxiety and the intensity wasn't where it needed to be. Alabama, the biggest, baddest brand in all of college football, the most dominant brand in all of college football, had anxiety against a team they had been for 15 straight years. I mean, who is this Alabama? Is this the start of the end for Alabama? Like that? That's not what got them 7 national championships. That's not Alabama had a killer mentality, a killer instinct for years. That if you gave them any sort of light, they would take it and run with it, and they would destroy you. Bama doesn't do that anymore. Like I saw someone say this in their last 13 games against Power 5 opponents. 7 of them have either been losses or one possession, last second wins for Alabama. They aren't dominating anymore. As either A, the rest of the sport has caught up to them, or two, they have fallen behind. And I think it's a combination of both.
I mean, of course, Alabama fans are gonna say probably the same excuses of 2019. Oh, our quarterback is not 100%. He's been dealing with injuries, and but I feel like it's not that Alabama is is going down. I just feel like the sport has been caught up to them because the coaches are reinventing themselves as well. I know Nick Saban has been the Mount Rushmore of college coaches, but at some point there's going to be fresh minds with better ideas and can in any coming Saturday come close or even beat Nick Saban like Josh Heupel did.
Yeah, I'm willing to go on record now with a kind of a boldish prediction. Alabama's going to be really, really good for many years to come. But I think the years of them winning a national title every other year are done. I think they'll still win national titles every couple of years. But I think truly their peak is over because when it comes to using NIL, when it comes to using transfer portal, it just it just feels like they're not cutting edge. Like look at Tennessee, look at the way we're using NIL, how cutting edge it is, and now look at our offense and how cutting edge it is. You just don't get that from Bama. You don't get that from Bill O'Brien. You definitely don't get that from Pete Golden, who I don't know how he sells a job. Like Bama fans have wanted him fired for a while now. And I'm surprised he's still retaining after getting up 52 to Tennessee. The most they've ever given up in a game since giving up 54 to Sewanee in 1907. So it's ugly times, and they have a fascinating game this week against Mike Leach and Mississippi State too. Now, kind of looking ahead to this week and just the playoffs in general, because when we think about Tennessee, right, they're number 3. They control their own destiny. Like you're undefeated, and you win out. Obviously, you would go to Atlanta, you would win the SEC East, and probably make the playoff, right, if you won out for the rest of the season. Now, winning out would include a win at currently number 1 Georgia. And that game in a couple of weeks, assuming the Vols, they take care of business this week against UT Martin, and they beat Kentucky next week. That would be a big game. I mean, obviously, Georgia's 3 weeks away, right? And I don't want to really think about that too much right now because Kentucky is a big game in its own right. We need to pay them back for what happened last time in Neyland. But, yeah, I mean, there's a chance Tennessee Georgia is going to be like one of the biggest games Tennessee's ever played in school history.
Oh, yeah, I think it kind of it's like this is a similar game probably when they faced Florida in 1998 when both teams were in the top 4 and probably whoever wins that game would have played for the SC championship and it would eventually go to the national championship and Tennessee got I know that game was in Neyland but and even if Tennessee loses, that's not the end of the road. I mean, Alabama lost to Auburn on the regular season, and Auburn went to the SEC championship, lost to Georgia, and Alabama went to the national championship. So even a loss in Athens is not the end of the world.
Of course. And look, here's the thing. How many of us truly expect it to be 6-1 right now? I think I has maybe at like 5-1 at this point. But I mean, to be 6-0, to be number 3 in the country, I don't know if I truly expected to have done it in the way that we have done it. I mean, it's just amazing to me where we are and the fact we're going to have this opportunity potentially in a few weeks, especially if we get by UT Martin in Kentucky, to be playing, because if you beat Georgia, then all you got to do is beat Missouri, South Carolina, and Vandy, and you're basically already guaranteed a spot in the playoff, even without winning in Atlanta, which is absolutely insane to think about.
Oh yeah, I and I feel like the way Tennessee fans reacted was definitely the same because and I didn't saw nobody criticizing, but I totally understand I know SEC fined $100,000 to the University of Tennessee because of the crowd invasion, and I feel like that was gladly played. Do you saw the video of Randy Boyd reacting to the
Yeah,
goalpost being
I
down?
did. Yeah, I probably
It
have
was
seen
perfect.
every video from. I probably haven't seen every video yet from Neyland and from around the state, but I've seen a vast majority of them because I've been probably watching them nonstop now for 4 days. Um, but yeah, I saw his reaction to it. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, look at all the money they made on Saturday. Like, it's fine. They'll just we have reserve goalposts. It is what it is. You had to store it in the field because it was beating Alabama for the first time in 15 years. Um, yeah, but I do kind of want to go into the playoff aspect of this. You're right. Even beyond just Tennessee and Georgia, just all the different scenarios. And there's so many. We don't have time to go into every single scenario because here's the thing: you still have an undefeated Ole Miss, right, out in the SEC West. They're now technically leading the SEC. People are thinking about, if you beat Georgia, you get to see Alabama again. Not so fast. Like Ole Miss can beat this Bama team. They could definitely beat this Bama team.
I
There's
I
no
mean,
guarantee. Bama's. Go ahead.
I mean, if you be completely honest, Ole Miss should be ranked above Alabama.
Yeah, they really should have, and they're undefeated.
Yeah,
They've beaten
I
a ranked team.
yeah, and I know Alabama fallen 3 spots, but they should be falling 4 because how can the team that is above Bama on the conference standings are under them on the rankings?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and obviously, Ole Miss have a huge game this week at LSU, so they'll have a chance to, I think, prove themselves some more in that rivalry game. But still, I think a lot of people are down on Ole Miss, and I do have some questions about their defense, like ours. But they kind of are. They kind of have they're almost like an opposite of us. They really do a lot of their damage on the ground. They have a great running attack. Their passing game is so, but their ground game is amazing. So I think that's huge for them. And you got to remember, too, Bama gave up 182 yards rushing to Tennessee. So, and in that game for Ole Miss, if they're going to run the ball a lot, that basically takes Will Anderson out of the game because he just, he's a pass rusher. And even though he didn't do that good of a job of that on Saturdays. So, I don't even know, man. It's just insane that we've been talking about this, and really how all the other conferences, and that's what's going to be fascinating to watch as a Tennessee fan the rest of the season. Every other conference matters to us right now. Like it matters what happens in UCLA, Oregon on Saturday. It matters what happens in the TCU Kansas State game this week. It matters what happens in Clemson, Syracuse. All of that matters to Tennessee because those are the teams that are around us.
I mean, we haven't mentioned that. I think it's the first time Tennessee has been inside the top 4 since the college football playoff committee was invented, right?
Yeah. I mean, the last time we were ranked this high was 2005. And the last time we were ranked this high and this late in the season was 2001. So it's been a very, very long time since we've been this relevant at this stage in the season. So it's, have fun with it, VOLS fans. Like it's going to be fun to actually watch all these games and actually care about the results, like UCLA, Oregon. Who do I want to win there? I don't know. Right. Because here's the thing. I kind of want some of these other undefeated teams to kind of gather some losses because it's going to be hard for us to finish undefeated. Right. Like I think a 1-loss Tennessee is getting over like a 1-loss TCU, a 1-loss UCLA, a 1-loss Oregon. Of course, you have 2-loss Utah, right? Like I think Tennessee would get in over any of those teams. What about Clemson? Is Syracuse their last chance to lose a game in the regular season? It very well could be the case. What if Syracuse pulls off the upset Saturday? Do they get launched to the playoff conversation?
Interesting. I mean, one thing that I mentioned, how Ohio State, the number 2 team in the country, I know they beat the number 5 at the time, Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has fallen apart since then. And
oh god, losing to Stanford. I mean, Marcus Freeman, if he's not careful, he's going to get himself fired within a year or two. It's a disaster up there.
So if you take that win away, which was a preseason ranked number 5 Notre Dame, they haven't faced any competition. It has been a blowout from non-conference cupcakes like Arkansas State and Toledo, and the Big Ten rival with 10 games was Rutgers and Wisconsin at home and Michigan State on the road. So I even
Yeah,
question
and
should
and here's the thing too. I will give them a little bit of break because they did schedule Notre Dame, and you would think they would be really good. They just aren't this year. And Wisconsin, Michigan State are normally really good teams. So like you look at that schedule, it should be really tough. It just all three of those teams happen to not be very good this year. So that's not Ohio State's fault. They weren't really good, and they did what a good team's supposed to do. They beat them all. So
I
the
mean
one I
what
really have more of a problem with is Michigan, because Michigan, their non-con is the biggest joke that I've ever seen. And I think if they lose even one game, they shouldn't be in the playoff. Yeah, I think if Michigan loses any games, they should be in the playoffs because your non-con was Colorado State, Hawaii, and Connecticut. That is pathetic. If you're Michigan, they didn't even
and
try to play anyone tough.
that's fair. That's a good point. And one game that I'll be watching if I was a Buckeye fan is going to Pennsylvania to face Penn State because Penn State always gives trouble playing to Ohio State playing at home. I remember
Yeah,
2016.
that's a tough one. Although Penn State, they didn't look real. They didn't look up to the task this past week. Now we'll say this. Although I just won that rant about Michigan. Michigan is really really good. They did finally get themselves a win against a ranked team. Maryland was a decent win, but Penn State's a lot better. So, good win for Michigan. They are a really good team, but still, I want to see some more from Michigan. Go into Ohio State and beat them, and then I'll forgive you for the scheduling at the beginning of the year because I don't know how they got away with such a weak schedule. I mean, that's just it's just insane to me.
I know, right? But because at least, yeah, because you pointed out, Ohio State at least scheduled, uh, Notre Dame and for the first game,
Yeah, and
but
Georgia scheduled Oregon, and obviously they beat the crap out of them. But now Oregon now is a top 10 team, so that looks really good for Georgia. And in Oregon, they're not punished that much for losing to Georgia, right? So, um, it is what it is for these teams, and it's just going to be really fascinating to watch how
because
this unfolds.
if we analyze the resume, which is basically what college football playoff committee does, Tennessee has a really good resume.
Yeah, the
Beating,
best one.
yeah, the best one, beating not one, not two, not three, but four ranked teams.
Definitely at the time. Now, Pittsburgh has fallen off a bit. They lost at home to Georgia Tech. Florida, as we have found out, just isn't very good. I mean, they're losing at home to LSU. Come on, what's going on in Gainesville? LSU, give them credit. They did beat Florida on the road. They have a chance for a huge win this week. Low key, if you're a Tennessee fan, maybe we should root for LSU this week, just because that would bolster our resume. It's almost like basketball, almost, right? Remember, because like when you're in basketball, you're sitting back. Okay, I want this team to win. I want that team to win to boost our RPI. It's almost like we're in that situation now, but with football, which is amazing. And of course, Alabama's Alabama. So, and of course, that win is the best win in all of college football. So, I mean, yeah, Tennessee's in an amazing spot. For sure. So there's so many scenarios. We got to see how all these conferences play out. The Big 12 and Pac-12 especially is really tricky to figure out. I don't know who's winning either one of those conferences. Texas might win the Big 12, but they have 2 losses. So would like an 11-2 Texas team be able to play their way back into the playoff conversation? Especially because Texas, they're going to be making the argument that we lost our games without Quinn Ewers. And if we had Quinn Ewers, we'd be undefeated. But you still lost those games. Like Tennessee, like Alabama won last week without Bryce Young. We've won all these games without Cedric Tillman. So it sucks you lost Quinn Ewers, but Texas, you lost 2 games. So it's going to be really difficult to impossible for them to get back into the playoff conversation.
Oh, I think Texas. My college football playoff conversation, I think it goes probably until Oregon, maybe UCLA. I don't know because I thought USC was going to be the contender in the Pac-12, but clearly that fallen apart because USC couldn't beat Utah.
Yeah, I would say whoever loses between UCLA and Oregon's probably done, right? That's effectively
Yeah,
an elimination game. Um, the
especially for
dark
Oregon.
horses,
Because Oregon already has the Georgia loss. It's going to be
of
two
course. I
losses.
mean, Nicole and the Canary. I mean, I think USC though still has a shot, right? Because they have to go to Oregon later on in the year. So if they can go on the road and beat Oregon, especially if Oregon were to like win this game, that would be a huge opportunity for USC. And they have to still. They also have to play UCLA. So those are going to be two huge games for USC, plus a Pac-12 title game. So USC has some chances for some big wins. Of course, I
Do you know?
mentioned them briefly. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, Syracuse, right? They're undefeated. If they somehow beat Clemson this week, they're in the playoff conversation. I don't think that's going to happen, but they have that opportunity. Looking down the list here, some I think about a team like Kansas State. They're 5-1 right now. They're undefeated right now in Big 12 play. Especially if they beat TCU this week, watch out because their one loss is to Tulane, which normally would be a bad loss, but Tulane's number 25. So that's actually a really good loss for Kansas State this year. I mean, no loss is good, but it's not that bad of a loss if you're Kansas State. Illinois, they're 6-1. If they can go on a run, put themselves into a position where, like, let's say you're 9 or 8 heading into the Big Ten title game. If you're in the Big Ten West, because the Big Ten West is not very good, what if Illinois pulls off the shocker against Ohio State? Do they get into that conversation? There's still a lot of crazy scenarios.
I mean, you mentioned the Big Ten East. It could probably happened the 2016, not nightmare scenario, but like the crazy. Because if you think about it, Michigan beats Penn State, Penn State beats Ohio State, and Ohio State beats Michigan. Imagine if all those teams have one loss and it's treated like each other.
Yeah. That is very much a possibility. And I think that's what we're going to see in like the Pac-12 and the Big 12, to be honest with you. I think we're going to see something like that unravel at the top of those conferences. Because you got to remember, the Pac-12 no longer has divisions. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 are the same in that they just take the two highest conference records and put those two teams in the conference title game. So that's what makes those conferences super fascinating.
Yeah, that's what makes college football great. I think and we still don't know what college football playoff committee first rank is going to be.
Yeah, that's the first Tuesday in November. So we have 2 more weeks of football before we get that. I'm actually going to I honestly have never sat down to really watch those. I will be sitting down to watch them this year. I guarantee you that.
We're gonna do. I want to do our podcast live as the ranks happen.
Oh, that would be fun. We actually have a reason now to care about the rankings. Can you believe that? We might have a reason to watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony this year. I haven't sat down to watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony in like a decade because I just think it's garbage normally. But I'm like, hey, if there's a Tennessee guy there, I'm going to watch him. So as you could tell, folks, I'm in absolute delirium over the state of my VOLS. And I'm absolutely infatuated with college football right now. But we must move on. We got some other sports to talk about. Staying in Knoxville, though, the basketballs. It is about that time. And, of course, all Tennessee fans, they're on the gridiron right now. I understand. Normally, we'd be praying for the hardwood. But Rick Barnes and the boys, whenever this magical ride is done for the volunteer football team, the old reliables, they'll be there ready to take us in at TBA. Them, and, of course, you have the Lady Vols. The basketballs are ranked number 11 in the AP, and I gotta look this up. I don't think the women's rankings came out yet. I don't know if they have. Actually, no, wait. They have. Tennessee's ranked number 5. All right, the Lady Vols are ranked number 5. I don't know when that came out.
High.
Yeah, so the Lady Vols are ranked 5th, and the men's team is ranked 11th. But in some computer analytical polls like KenPom, the men's team is ranked as high as number 4. Suggesting that the computer thinks Tennessee should be like a Final Four contender. Now, we know the narratives around Rick Barnes, right? That, great regular season coach, great developer talent, great recruiter, not very good in March, right? Only one Final Four. Now, granted, he did win the SEC tournament last year, but still didn't translate to the NCAA tournament. We think about all the talent that's coming back on the men's side. We have Santiago Vescovi, or whatever we're calling him now. You have Josiah James, Zakai Ziegler, Olivier Comlois back from injury. Of course, you have the new additions of BJ Edwards and Tyrese Key. I think it's going to be a really good team. Of course, I'll have to see how it shakes out. I really haven't had a ton of time to sit down and just think about college basketball. But what are you thinking about this men's team? Because I'm excited to watch them when we start in a couple of weeks.
The returners are the specials because I feel like if you think about it, Santi, I remember when I asked him a question at a press conference in Spanish. That was and it was so funny that the SID at the time, Tom, caught me off guard. I wasn't expected that. I had to improvise, but
Yeah,
it was a fun moment I had with Santi, and I feel like, and it's if you think about it, it's gonna be his second full season of the Vols because when he arrived mid-season. If you think about it, how crazy it is, he arrived mid-season.
right. And
He's like,
it was that 2020 year, or 20 year, yeah, it was like with the 2019-2020 year where that happened. And we were terrible that year. But of course, the tournament got canceled. And of course, a lot of people were really upset the tournament got canceled. But really for Tennessee, it kind of worked out beautifully for us because we got to have a year where we sucked, but really didn't lose anything because the tournament didn't even happen. So, we
not
didn't
even
waste a year being amazing.
not even the SEC tournament happened. I was there to cover Tennessee opening game versus Bama, the game that never happened.
Right. So, yeah, but I still feel bad for like Dayton, San Diego State plays teams like that because they had special teams that year and they got screwed hard that year. But anyway, yeah, I think when you look at this team, I think it's gonna go through like Josiah James. Of course, he's gotten better every single year. I expect him to get better this year. I think Olivia Conway is going to be huge. Jonas Idu, I'm excited to see what he does. The one thing that I really that would just complete this team would be Kennedy Chandler. And I understand he had to go into the NBA, but I really wish he would have given it one more year. Maybe he would have been a lottery pick if he had stayed one more year. But I don't begrudge him. You got to go make that money. So obviously we'll talk way more about them in the weeks to come. Lady Vols too. Lady Vols going to be very, very exciting this year. Potential Final Four contender. They bring back a ton on their team, and Kelly Harper. I know this past weekend she was out recruiting. She had recruits at the game. And also, speaking of Lady Vols, the Vols football team will actually be wearing blue armbands in honor of Pat Summitt. So that's just something to think about.
I mean,
for
because
Lady Vols.
And probably Kelly Harper, she has the same tip under her shoulder as Josh Heupel, because if you really, really think about the University of Tennessee sports, you think of football and you think of women's basketball. Those are the biggest brands on campus because
Right.
football, with all the tradition and all the with General Nealon and Johnny Majors and Philip Fulmer, all the national championships. But the most successful sports program in the University of Tennessee is women's basketball, with all that Pat Summitt legacy. And
Yeah, I mean,
Kelly
that's
Harper
right.
can be the one who brings it back.
Yeah, I mean, she understands. She literally played for Pat Summitt, so she knows what it's supposed to look like. And you look at the team that she has this year. When you look at Jordan Horston, Jordan Walker, Damari Key, the trio of seniors, they've been here forever. They've gotten really, really good over that time. Tamari Key, for my money, is probably the best big in women's basketball, in my opinion. I mean, of course, you got Ricky Jackson from Mississippi State. This is going to be a massive year for the Lady Vols. This is a huge opportunity. I think they can go deep. Actually, I probably have more confidence in going deeper than the men, if I'm being honest. But I think both of them could be playing into the second weekend of March, maybe deeper. It's going to be a fun season on the hardwood. Um, and hopefully the magic that we've created on the football field takes its way over the TBA as well, because if we can go from football to both of the basketball teams going crazy, then Tony Vitello is going to be just sitting there in March and April, ready to take the baton and bring that magic over to Lindsey Nelson Stadium. It could be a fun, full academic year on Rocky Top.
I mean, if you think about it, the excitement started even earlier this year with what UT baseball did. With
Right.
all
A friend of mine really said this. It almost feels like this whole momentum that Tennessee has, even in football right now, started last year in 2021 with Tony Vitello. Ever since Tony Vitello went on that run with the baseball team last year, it just feels like it's been a tidal wave, a tsunami.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I feel like, and it was the moment felt perfect because it was the the true coming back of full crowd stadiums and Tennessee baseball. I remember that Vandy series was
Right.
probably my last big moment on campus as covering UT sports, UT athletics, and it was an amazing atmosphere. People line up outside the stadium. The watch parties outside the stadium. Full crowds inside the stadium.
Yeah, when Drew Gilbert hit the grand slam against Wright State, that might have been the moment that kind of changed the wind in Knoxville, and ever since then, it's just been an orange tsunami. Hopefully, the tsunami will collect some championships here in the near term. But yeah, obviously more to come. Obviously, Tennessee, the Vols this week in football play UT Martin in-state opponent should be a relatively easy one. Now UT Martin, I will give them credit; they are a top 15 FCS team, but it's one of those games that Tennessee should win by a lot. Let's just be real.
Yeah, it should be a blowout. It should be, you know, I risky and unpopular opinion. Should Tennessee rest some starts and Joe Milton start that game?
No, no, I think you got to go. You got to keep your players hot. You got to go out there. You got to let them play for a little bit, and then
If if,
because here's
if
the thing:
this
unlike Akron, I don't think UT Martin's going to play us dirty. Like Akron was dirty; they were going for our knees and stuff. The Skyhawks won't do that, so I'm not as worried about that.
I was just gonna say, probably if it was a Brazilian coach who was coaching the game, he would have definitely rest some players after an emotional and very physically demanding game against Alabama. There will definitely be some players resting.
I
But I
must
know
say,
it's
we
hard.
are very fortunate that we get UT Martin this week. If we were playing even like a South Carolina or Missouri, I would be terrified this week because that game last week was so emotionally taxing for Tennessee that, man, I could not only imagine if we had to play like an SEC team this week. It'd be a tough turnaround.
Oh yeah, and we'll see what college football gives us. This probably not big emotions, but let's see what happens in college football. But let's move on to some NFL talks. You had a big win, Nick. You got a big win this weekend in terms of your picks, 11-7.
Wow, let's go. Let's get it. And we do actually kind of like how we've been doing since it seems like we're just doing on Thursday nights now. Um, we do have, of course, a Thursday night game now. I do have Yankees Astros on, so I don't have the football game on. Of
I
course,
have
right
him
now.
on. Saints leading 14-12, 2 minutes and 28 seconds to the end of the second quarter.
Wow, maybe we actually have a good primetime game for once. So I'll have to.
Yeah.
I'll probably
Do you
allude
think
to it some as we talk about the NFL here.
do you think finally the Cardinals are gonna break their home loss streak? They lost all their 3 games at home this season.
I certainly hope so for their sake. I mean, it's kind of crazy that the Cardinals cannot win at home because usually State Farm Stadium is a pretty good home and field. Now I know Arizona has the reputation of being a bunch, snowbirds who, they're not they're fans of other teams. They're not fans of Arizona because they all moved from other places to go live in the warm desert. Um, but Arizona typically does really well out in Glendale, but that's just not the case this year. So now it's 14-14. Hopefully that was Kyler Murray because I have Kyler Murray on my fantasy team. So that was Ingram. So dang. But anyway, Taysom Hill scored a touchdown. But I've got several fantasy players in this game. But yeah, so 14-14 now. It seems like a pretty entertaining game to me. Um,
So
and
since the
then in this
game
game,
since this game tied, who you got?
I got the Cards. I think the Cards will pull it out.
I got the Saints. They always beat teams that have birds as their mascots.
Very true. Very true. I feel like we always disagree on the Thursday game, but definitely let's get into some of these Sunday matchups.
Oh, and I'm happy that Rodrigo Blankenship got back to the NFL. He was released by the Colts. Now he is for the Saints. He's part Brazilian, so I will always be root for my homes. The even half Brazilian counts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's kind of crazy because Blankenship was really, really good.
Yeah, but I guess he wasn't good enough for the Colts, but now he's with the Cards. But let's start with our prediction for Sunday games. It's crazy to think that the Bengals and the Falcons have the same record.
I know. I thought the Falcons would be the worst team in the NFL this year, but it just to their credit, they've been really competitive. And the Bengals, they are who we thought they were, right? Like last year they had a magical season, and now they're kind of back to what we thought they would be last year. But I do think that when you take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals and kind of their line play, I think going into New Orleans last week again, that huge win was big for them, and I think that they're getting it together overall. I really do like Cincy in this game, and plus I feel like the Atlanta passing attack is kind of falling apart. Like Drake London has been irrelevant the past few weeks. Mariota has just that game is falling apart. I like the Bengals here.
Yeah, I like the Bengals too. Give me Joe Burrow, who had a really good performance versus the Saints, and it was even funny how Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase play so well at the Superdome. I feel like the Bengals should move some of their games to New Orleans.
Yeah, I think they should because definitely Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have that Louisiana magic.
So let's move on to the second game of Sunday. The 4-2 Cowboys hosting the 1-4 Lions. Yeah, I feel like the Cowboys should take care of business, even though I guess Cooper Rush couldn't handle Jalen Hurt and the Eagles, and Dak Prescott, probably coming back.
Yeah, the Lions have the worst defense in the league. Although they have one of the best offenses. With Dak Prescott back in the fold, it should be an easy Dallas win. I mean, look, here's the thing: I was believing in Detroit for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it just at some point you just gotta say, all right, I gotta start seeing some wins from y'all before I start picking y'all again. And the Lions have reached that point with me. I want to believe in the Lions so bad because they're a fun team to watch. Their defense is horrible, and it's really maddening. And I feel bad for Lions fans. Y'all deserve better, but Cowboys win here.
Yeah, I got the Cowboys too. I feel like especially with Dak coming back, this team really needs Dak. I think Cooper Rush gave his all, and it's crazy that when Dak got injured, all the Cowboys fans thought they would go 2-4 or 3-3. The Cowboys are still a viable playoff team with 4-2 with the NFC.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Eagles are amazing. Well, not amazing. They're really, really good. But the Cowboys could easily get that top wild card spot.
Yeah. So next one is the AFC South rivalry matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and your Tennessee Titans.
It feels like we just had this game because we just did 3 weeks ago. So I don't, and I know I complained about this before the season. Why did the NFL schedule it like this? I'll never know. You know, the Colts are going to have 4 of their division games done after Sunday. They only have 2 more division games the rest of the year. I think that's insane. I think division games should be left more towards the end of the year, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
Because that's when
definitely.
they would
Because
have more weight.
no, yeah, that's where because if you think about it, why you put division games that decides the fate of teams going to the playoffs when the beginning of the season where you is I know it's like oh every game is relevant, you know, if you lose in week 1 is in week 17 that's the same loss, I guess, but the pressure of a Colts and Titans on week 6, 7 is different than a Colts Titans game on week 17. I remember when they both play against each other on the last regular season game back in 2019. How big that game felt.
Oh, absolutely. And that's really where it should be. But unfortunately, that's not where it is. So I think it's
It's
a
like
big scheduling mistake by the NFL.
it's like the Brazilian Confederation when they had a really good idea that I love it, where they put all their rivalry games in the last week of Brasileirão that were great. The games were exciting. It was a lot of pressure. No, like oh, I'm gonna I'm not gonna care about the last week of the regular season, even though I don't have any title contention or relegation or even Libertadores aspirations, because you wanted to beat your rival because your rival might be playing for a title or a Libertadores contention or even relegation. So and same in the NFL, like even like Colts and Titans on week 17, even if the Colts were eliminated and the Titans were fighting for a wild card spot, that felt different.
Oh, yes. Yes. You're completely right. And I don't know why the NFL schedules the way they do. So, also, too, the Cardinals just took the lead 2014 off a pick six of Andy Dalton, but Rodrigo Blankenship missed the extra point. So, 2014
So
in Arizona.
now let's head to interesting game between a two. I feel
We
like
haven't picked. We didn't pick the game between
oh,
Titans and Colts.
I picked the Titans. I since I started picking the Titans, they're on a roll. So I'll pick them again.
I'm actually going to join you again. I picked them in Washington, and I think coming off the bye week, I think they'll be rested. I liked how we were getting the ball more and more to Derrick Henry before the bye. Plus, I know that obviously the Colts won last week. They've looked better in recent weeks, but I question the wisdom of relying on Matt Ryan to throw the ball 60 times. And I don't feel like Jonathan Taylor is 100% right now. And I just don't think that is sustainable if you're the Indianapolis Colts. You have to be able to run the ball. That is the way your team is constructed to succeed. And um, I think the Titans are going to be able to execute better what they want to do versus what the Colts want to do. So I think it's going to be another close game. It'll be another good one. But give me the Titans to complete the season sweep.
So now next one is two teams for different reasons, but they're both in crisis mode. The Green Bay Packer, the 3-3 Green Bay Packers going to Washington to face the 2-4 Commanders. And it's so crazy. Like I know the Packers are 500 team and the Commanders are 2-4, but they feel like both are in crisis. You know, the Commanders don't clearly their front office and their coaching staff and their coach don't trust their quarterback, and the Packers are imploding. You know, with Aaron Rodgers not having any weapons and Matt LaFleur can't find a way to make the offense work.
right. And we both picked the Jets to win last week, and we were right. I mean, could you imagine saying at the beginning of the year we're gonna both pick the Jets to win in Green Bay, and would both be right doing it, and they did it by 17. Um, I don't know that this Packers team. It just goes to show you. Yes, you have an amazing quarterback, but you have to have the weapons and the talent around them to succeed. And I guess it's the difference right between Rodgers and Brady. Brady was willing to take a pay cut to get the weapons around him. Rodgers wanted the $200 million contract, and his best weapon now is Alan Lazard, who's not bad, but he's not Mike Evans. He's not Chris Godwin. He's not Leonard Fournette. Um,
He's not
and
Devontae
the
Adams.
Packer, exactly. And that's where the Packers aren't going to go anywhere this year because you can't throw the ball to air. You gotta be able to throw it to someone. I mean, heck, if you put Jalen Hyde on that team right now, he might be the best receiver on there. But at the very least, if you have sickness, if you have illness, if you're an NFL team, there's no better cure than the Washington Commanders. No better cure, especially with the drama around Dan Snyder, him wanting to expose all the other owners, with him causing the other owners to fight each other. I mean, man, I forgot to put the, I knew I was forgetting to put something on the rundown, and that's what it was. The NFL owners all fighting each other. Yeah, but the Commanders are a big joke. I mean, I know they won last week, but that was against the Bears, who were also a joke. Probably the worst primetime game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Give me the Packers.
Yeah, I think it's not. Yeah, give me the team that has the least, the team that has the little bit of better, weapons. The Packers.
Right.
Now, NFC South matchup between the 3-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the 1-5 Carolina Panthers. I mean, I wasn't expecting Carolina to be that bad, that awful. I know they fired their coach Matt Rule, but and it's so funny. Carolina Panthers has the two best quarterback picks from that 2017 draft, and they can't get it to work.
I know. We're in a war zone because it's time for the Carolina Panthers to tank. They're just in tank mode. We saw what happened with Robbie Anderson last week. When you have stuff like that, when you have NFL coaches dismissing grown men off the sideline during a game, it's not like the Antonio Brown situation where he kind of showed himself off the field. They told him to get off the field, that they didn't want him anymore, and they trade him away to Arizona. I've never seen that before in the NFL, and it's just a sign of a bad culture. I think you're going to see a lot of these other players go and get traded away. I think you'll see Christian McCaffrey. He's going to get traded somewhere. I don't know how many more games the Panthers are going to win this year. They may not win any more games this year. They might win one or two more. It isn't going to be this one, though. And the Buccaneers, they haven't been that good this year either. I think, Tom Brady honestly made a mistake coming back this year, made a severe mistake coming back this year.
But he said he's not ready for retirement.
Yeah, well, his body looks like it's ready for retirement. He just doesn't have the arm strength that he used to. He doesn't have what it takes, I think, truly. And I understand if you look at the stats, right? 67.2% completion, 8 touchdowns, only 1 receptions. But you can't stretch the field like you used to. And that's the problem. And that makes your offense not dynamic.
And I think his statement about not wanting to retire is because now he has to grab onto football, because the way he had, the way what happened in his personal life with Giselle, it seems like he made a choice, football over her. So now he wants to, grab onto football to prove. And I feel like it's because he's so obsessed. And that, of course, made him probably probably the best quarterback in the NFL history. But now he doesn't want to like leave the show. Now that he has come back and sacrificed so much.
Yeah, and, I can't really fault him for that, right? Like, this has been his life. His whole life, he was training to get to this point. He's been at this point for so long. I mean, he's been in the NFL since I was a toddler. But you gotta know when to hang it up, and he should have hung it up after last year. And it's just he's a shell of what he was. But thankfully, at least this week, he's playing the Carolina Panthers, so he'll get a win. But like the Packers, it's kind of sad to see Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady both in this state. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's that bad; just doesn't have any weapons. Tom Brady legitimately has, kind of fallen off a cliff. But I am going Tampa here in this game.
Yeah, I'm going Tampa too. I can't, but it's going to be a 115, 116 Panthers, and they're gonna because it's so sad. And correct, I said 2017 is the top two quarterbacks from the 2018 draft. That's so much expectations. Both Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, looks like the future of the NFL, and the future was hidden on the seventh pick with Josh Allen. That was a pick that was originally from Tampa Bay, and the Bills got trade move up to move up to get Josh Allen, and it paid off.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be real. I thought that was gonna be a bust when it happened. I think I tweeted out that night, Josh Allen will be a bust. And I was wrong. And I'm glad I was wrong. Josh Allen is an amazing player to watch. So,
oh yeah.
Anyway, next game I believe it's the New York Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars, right?
Yeah, the 5-1 of all odds, the 5-1 Giants versus the 2-4 Jaguars play in Jacksonville, Florida.
And what's crazy here is the line is Jags -3. The Jacksonville's a favorite in this game.
Yeah, they probably. I mean, even though the Giants have won their both of their games on the road.
Yeah, I don't really understand this one. The Jacksonville Jaguars have not been that impressive in recent weeks. I know they went on the road and had a really impressive win against the Chargers, but in recent weeks they've lost to the Texans. They let Matt Ryan throw the ball over the field on them. There's something about this Giants team that just there's a team or two every year that comes out of nowhere and just continues to find ways to win ball games. And I think the New York Giants might be that team this year. Daniel Jones, he's doing what he needs to do to win football games. That defense is really, really good. Wink Martindale, maybe the coordinator of the year so far in the league. I think they're better than Jacksonville. I think they're going to go into Jacksonville and get a win. Give me the New York Football Giants.
I'm going to take a risk. I'll take the Jaguars.
Well, Vegas agrees with you. Vegas is taking Jags. I might actually have to bet this one. I might have New York +3 in the New York money line has to be nice value. Anyway, we have the Cleveland Browns at 2-4, a team that just is falling apart. I mean, honestly, maybe in a karmic sense, they deserve it after taking on a Deshaun Watson that's still getting more and more lawsuits filed against him. It's rough. Are we ever even going to see Deshaun Watson take the field for the Cleveland Browns? We'll have to wait and see. Going to free Baltimore, coming off a loss to New York, and I think if you're a Ravens fan, you got questions about Harbaugh, you got questions about that defense, even you got questions about Lamar Jackson and his ability to finish games. Interesting game here. I think that both of these teams are desperate for a win in this game. You don't want to lose this one.
But I take the Ravens.
I agree. I take the Ravens as well. I think the Browns are a dumpster fire this season. And I think bringing upon Deshaun Watson is, at least for the meantime, going to be disastrous in terms of their results. You'll have to wait and see him actually play if it's truly the ultimate disaster that it's beginning to look like. But you better hope that he's actually really good if you're a Browns fan, because otherwise that might have been the worst mistake you've ever made. Anyway, Jets, the New York Jets, 4-2. Both of the New York football teams. It's so good to have New York back in the NFL, right? Like we have Tennessee back in college football, and we have New York back in the NFL. The Jets are 4-2 to what I think is probably the most disappointing team in all the league this year, the Denver Broncos. Thank goodness this game is not in prime time. We do not have to suffer through Russell Wilson getting crushed behind his offensive line every single play, his receivers dropping passes, them unable to drop, being unable to run the ball, and Nathaniel Hackett not knowing how to work a clock. Denver's still a 1-point favorite here, but I don't care. Give me the New York Jets. So that running attack is really, really good. Brees Hall is starting to justify that second round pick. In that defense, Sauce Gardner, some of the other pieces that they have, Robert Salah coaching them. I really like what the New York Jets are doing this year. That's a solidly built football team. That could be a wild card team potentially. I don't think they'll beat the Bills to win the division, but give me the Jets because the Broncos are a disaster.
The Jets are undefeated on the road, especially coming
Yeah.
off a win in Green Bay. Imagine if they go back to back road wins with two of the most expensive and flashy quarterbacks in the league, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. What this will do.
Oh, absolutely. And the Jets are an old school. They're winning with defense in the running game. And plus two, Russell Wilson, he's banged up. He may not go on Sunday. So that's a problem if you're Denver. I mean, even still, you've invested a lot of resources in him. He's still the best one you got. I don't think it's completely his fault either. I think the scheme stinks. I think their offensive line is terrible. And the coaching is just not very good. So give me the Jets.
Yeah, so we both picked the Jets. Next one is this also is going to be a mag game between the 1-3-1 Texas and 1-4 Raiders in Las Vegas.
Yeah. I'll go Raiders. I think the Raiders have been playing better in recent weeks. I mean, they're still not very good, but I mean, I think they had a bit of a disastrous start. But remember, they almost beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. They almost beat the Titans in Nashville. They should have beaten the Cardinals. So it's not like they're getting blown out in these games. They're not finding ways to finish them. But against the Houston Texans, I believe in their ability to pull it out. So give me the Raiders.
I'll go with you. I'll go the Raiders too. The Texans are going to tank again, especially trying to find their quarterback. Because this class is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I would say this: if you're the number one draft pick, let's say you're C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or even Hendon Hooker, which one of those two teams would you rather go to, the Texans or the Panthers? Which one of those teams would you go to?
That's hard. I mean, it all depends what coach Panthers will hire.
Mm-hmm. Who's going to take advantage of those teams? I think the Lions too could be up there because I know Jared Goff's been playing well, but they're going to be drafting so high they might pick the next quarterback. So I think those three teams might get those three quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But anyway, next game
is the West Coast game between the Seattle Seahawks, the 3-3 Seattle Seahawks versus the 4-2 Los Angeles Chargers, which I feel this game is a lot of pressure because Justin Herbert is playing a good season, but he has to win those big games in order to prove that he can, be at least go to the playoffs.
Right, and so something about that offense is a little off. They aren't explosive like they were last year. I think part of it is not having Keenan Allen. But the Seattle Seahawks, you got to give them credit. Geno Smith has been playing really, really good ball this year. 9 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Rashad Penny's playing really well. I might be a little crazy, but you got to remember, too, the Seattle has 1 extra day of rest versus the Chargers. I like Seattle. I really do. I think Pete Carroll will coach circles around Brandon Staley and will find a way to get out of LA with a win.
I got the Chargers. I believe in Justin Herbert. So you got the Seahawks,
Yep.
and I got the Chargers.
All right, now this is probably the game of the week right here between the Chiefs and the 49ers. Super Bowl from whatever, which one that was from 2019.
Wait,
That
2019, 2020.
2020, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's the last major sport event before COVID hit. So, yeah, I think this one's very interesting.
And it's gonna be the both quarterbacks that play in that game, Jimmy Garoppolo versus Patrick Mahomes.
Right. But yeah, the 49ers, they're coming off of a really bad game in Atlanta, but they are hosting this here. And Kansas State's coming off of a last second loss to Buffalo. And they really, honestly, they could have lost to the Raiders. This thing could go either way, I think.
I'm gonna go 49ers.
I was actually thinking the same thing. I'm also going the 49ers as well here, even though Kansas City is a 2.5 point.
It's the kind of game that Shanahan loves to win.
Yeah. And it's the type of game early on in the year, it seems like Kansas City likes to lose before they get themselves in the form and really go on a run towards the end of the year. So I like San Fran. Now, Sunday Night Football.
Oh.
Why? Now, okay, a couple of weeks ago, this would have been really fun. But the Miami is all injured to heck now. So Tua's coming back at least. Probably.
But still, though, I don't know. Like, probably Chiefs and 49ers deserve way more than Steelers and versus the Dolphins. Mark my words. This game's gonna be a low scoring game, and a field goal is gonna decide by the end. And I think it's gonna go in Steelers' favor.
Ooh,
mark my words.
Man, I don't know. I mean, this feels like the type of game the Steelers would win, right? But I don't know. I feel like with Tua coming back, Sunday Night Football, I just think the Miami still has too many weapons. I think with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I like that more than whatever Pittsburgh has an offense. I really like the Dolphins to win here.
And to finish up our Week 7 predictions, the
Bears,
the Monday, I mean, we bashed Sunday Night Football, but Monday Night Football, Jesus Christ.
I mean, this is gonna be my hot take too about these primetime games. Who scheduled these primetime games?
They don't make any sense.
Like, okay, I understand they schedule these at the beginning of the year, but they need to take a lesson from college football. College football doesn't schedule their games until like 2 or 3 weeks out, so they can schedule the big games. Like, if they had known Alabama, Tennessee was going to be what it was, they would have put that as a night game instead of texting them Alabama, right? But they put themselves into these horrible situations because, they marry themselves to these matchups, and every single one this year has been horrible, terrible. And Bears Patriots is another one, but at least we get to watch Bailey Zappi, I think, again. I'm not sure if he's starting, but I'm pretty sure he will be. Although Mac Jones might come back.
Yeah, he stand out. He stand out on today's practice.
Yeah. Either way, Patriots are winning, even with Bailey Zappi. Because Justin Fields has no help whatsoever. No line, no good receivers, a terrible offensive scheme. No help. Give me the Patriots.
Yeah, I got the Patriots too. The Bears are the disappointing team, and that everybody was expecting more, and they haven't delivered. And as you said, Justin Field probably missed the days of Ryan Day and good old line and reliable teammates, because the Bears have given none of that.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad to see. So it's miserable to be a Bears fan. That's for sure. If you're a Chicago fan, and it's gonna be mental for people to watch this on Monday Night Football as well. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that wraps up this week's NFL picks. Now, real quickly here to kind of top off some of the rest of the American topics. We are in baseball postseason, October. We have the ALCS and the NLCS. Of course, ALCS Astros Yankees. That's going on right now. I believe it's still 3-2 Astros. I
Yeah,
think
in the middle of the seventh inning. Yes.
so. That's come down to the wire here. And of course, you have the NLCS between the Padres and the Phillies. That series had a 1-1. And obviously, I think the big story there with the NL, both the Dodgers and the Braves went down. I think it's more shocking that the Dodgers went down, Like
I mean,
they invested all that money.
do do you think David Roberts is holding this team back? And I know he won one championship in 2020, but it's
Copenhagen.
yeah, it's like the Lakers title. It counts, but it's not the full thing. And he said he guaranteed this team will win a title this year, and it haven't. And I feel like he won a title, and he if everybody expects more from the Dodgers, and the Dodgers always blew it.
Yeah. You bring in Freddie Freeman, and it's just it just didn't work. I don't know. And the Padres, you think about it, they didn't even have their best player in Tatis. Well, I mean, I guess Juan Soto is technically better now, but still, it's just mind blowing to think about just how bad the Dodgers blew it. And then you have to ask, are the Dodgers in the point where they're kind of like the Yankees, where they could spend all this money year after year, but maybe there's just something with the chemistry that just never can get right for them to win it, because you got to be hot for a couple days in October. Like the Braves, they were the best team in baseball, honestly, from July to September, but it didn't matter because they were off last week, and they got knocked out by the Phillies. And I kind of want your take on this. There's some people who are blaming the new playoff format on this, but if you look at the Astros and the Yankees, they both won their series and they were the top two seeds. So it's just the Dodgers and Braves didn't take care of business. And
No,
really, on
there's
the
no
side of
there's no
things,
excuse. There's no excuse. I mean, again, it's a best of 5 games. In baseball, that's enough games to see who's the best team.
yeah.
There's no
And really,
excuse.
their pitching fell apart. And then the timely hitting, they just had no timely hitting. They left, especially in game one, they left so many people on base. I knew from then, I was like, okay, this is problematic. You can't be leaving all these people on base and win in October. That's one thing that they were amazing at last year, was getting people home. They couldn't get people home this year.
Yeah, I feel like the Dodgers should be kind of rethinking a lot from the postseason. I feel like it should be a time for managerial changes. I think David Roberts has given everything he got. I think there's nothing left. In I don't know. I feel like the Dodgers should be performing better. I mean, they only went with all the dynasty in the division. They only went to the World Series 3 times.
Yeah, and only won one.
Yeah.
Only won one. So it's just not enough if you're Los Angeles, I would say. But kind of like looking at the series that we do have here. And also shout out to the Mariners and the Guardians as well. Great seasons for them. I know the Mariners, they didn't win a game against the Astros, but still they took them all the way to the 17th inning on Saturday. Obviously, I didn't see it. I was focused on the balls. But you know, good for them. Great season. Good to see them back in the postseason. And the Guardians, I feel like we did not give them any chance at all. I mean, those guys almost won the series. It would have been an amazing Cinderella story this year.
Yeah, but the Yankees saved themselves, because if they were eliminated in the ALDS, that would have been the biggest, you know, blunder in a team probably in decades. Because the way the Yankees dominated the division with the Aaron Judge, home run record, NLCS is the least they could achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Speaking of the Yankees right now, they're down 1-0 in this series. They're down 3-2 in this game, bottom of the seventh inning. How crucial is it for the Yankees to come back and win this game? So if they go down 2-0, yes, you go back to Yankee Stadium. But I feel like you gotta find a way to win this game because you don't want to have to. Because I know you get free games now. You get free games back in New York, I think.
If they can, I think it's a.
Or is it a 2-2-1-1-1?
I think it's a 2-2-1-1-1.
Okay, it's just the World Series. That's 2-3-2. Yeah, that's just the World Series. It's 2-3-2. So I don't know. I think you got to find a way to win this game if you're in New York.
Yeah, if you still won in Houston, that'll change the whole momentum.
Oh, absolutely. So, how do you think the series is going to play out? Because I feel like for the Yankees, this is
it's actually 2-3-2.
Oh, okay. So they would have free straight in New York. So I mean, you would have a chance to put yourself back in contention for sure, but you'd have to kind of sweep it.
If they win this game, they can and win all their games in Yankee Stadium. They're in.
Yeah, but I think the odds of that are really slim. And here's the thing: if you lose this game and you're down 2-0, even if you go like 2-1 in your home stadium, you're going back to Houston down 3-2. So, which is not ideal. So, I don't know. If they lose tonight, I think it's going to be hard for them to come back and win the series.
Yeah, I think if they lose tonight and lose the first game in Yankee Stadium, then it's done.
Yeah. What do you think are the keys for them to come back and win here?
What
do you think are the keys for the Yankees to overcome the Astros?
I mean, the pitching matchup. Verlander dominated Game 1, and Justin Verlander just shines when he plays the Yankees.
Yeah, he's one of the all-timers, at least in our generation.
And Harrison Bader, what a postseason! 4 home runs, and think about it, all in clutch moments.
Right. Also, a bit of an update on the football game, just real fast. Arizona has picked off another pick six. Andy Dalton has thrown 2 pick sixes tonight, doing his best tribute to Jared Garantano. Arizona now have 28-14. But anyway, yeah, I think those are some pretty good keys. Now, on the other side, obviously, Yankees Astros were what we predicted for the ALCS, but this Padres Phillies matchup, I'll say this: those crowds in San Diego were really fun to watch, and I've seen a lot more of the NLCS than I have the ALCS. And
but if you think about it, I know everybody, probably the majority of people, thought the Braves and the Dodgers would give them another rematch in the postseason. But the Phillies and the Padres have been spending money and acquiring talents to be on those kind of moments. When you get Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, even if he's not playing, you expect your team to achieve to a certain level of in the making farther into the postseason. And the Phillies, they finally had the success after everybody thought when the Phillies got Bryce Harper, they would have finally be a contention team. But only now, after 4 years, they finally got to be in contention.
And how big is this series for Bryce Harper and his legacy? I mean, think about it. I think he's kind of haunted by the fact that he leaves Washington and the Nationals go and win the World Series without him. Now he has an opportunity to lead his team to one. So I think that's a huge deal. Also, I think one thing to watch for San Diego If they go on a run and win it all without Fernando's Tatis, that'd be the second straight year the team that won it lost their best player. I mean, think about Ronald Acuna last year was injured the entire postseason, and the Braves won the World Series, which then I think maybe would start forcing some teams to reconsider their contracts. Like, okay, we're seeing these teams win without their best players. This isn't like the NFL where losing your quarterback is the end. That's an interesting point to think about.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just show how baseball is becoming more not a solo kind of like a one star and more like a complete lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's really more about the coaching strategies and all that. So, I think that's just super fascinating to think
But
about.
I pick Yankees and the Phillies to go to the World Series.
I think the Padres are going to find a way to get 2 out of 3 in Philly, and they're going to find a way to win it. I think it's going to be Padres and Astros for the
Ooh,
title.
let's see
Going
who's
to-
gonna be. I mean, both will be good matchups. Probably Fox will be cheering for like a more like a Phillies and Yankees because Philadelphia and New York are two big markets compared to Houston and San Diego.
I mean, those are 2 big markets as well, but maybe not. But I mean, New York and Philadelphia are a little bit bigger. Um, yeah, I think regardless of what's NLCS, they're rooting for the Yankees. They want the Yankees to win. So
I want the Yankees to win. I think having the Yankees in the World Series just feels right. But also if the Yankees, again fails to the Astros and lose the series, how do you assess Aaron Boone term tenure? And I don't know if he stays.
right,
So that's a big series for Aaron Boone.
yeah. So I mean, I think Aaron Boone and Dave Roberts in a competition to get themselves fired because of postseason failures.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, so we'll see what happens. We'll see where we are next week with that. Very quick, just a few more smaller topics. NBA, they kicked back, they tipped back off this week. Some of their first games. Probably the most notable results so far: LeBron and the Lakers getting absolutely demolished by the Warriors opening night. The Lakers are just their roster construction isn't good. I
I
don't
mean,
honestly I don't see
Le-
LeBron winning another championship.
LeBron publicly, you know, in his press conference after the loss, explicitly said that his team needs shooters.
Yeah.
But then he went and lobbied to get Russell Westbrook, which everybody knows he's not a shooter.
Yeah, I mean, look at their lineup. Right now, they're playing the Clippers. Your lineup for the Lakers: you have Anthony Davis, LeBron, you have Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverly. Patrick Beverly, he's a defensive guard. He's not a shooter. Then you have Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker. I mean, just this doesn't work. I'm sorry, this does not work. If you're the Lakers, so I mean, it's definitely not going to get you to beat the Warriors, that's for sure. Um, so obviously, it's way too early to like really take much of anything though outside of that. But obviously, Grizzlies they won. They're a team I'm really going to be following this year. So yeah, I mean, any thoughts on the first few nights here of the NBA?
Interesting that John Wall's coming back after 18 months playing now with the Clippers, and it's always interesting to see LA teams clashing. I know it's not like a big rivalry, but still, the Clippers and the Lakers are both a team with a lot of stars, but outside of 2020, both of them had a lot of disappointment.
That's right. It's just not a
And do you saw the James Harden dribble and how funny it was.
I did not see that. Also, too, I have to ask this too. I mean, then again, I'm not been paying close attention to NBA. Why is Kawhi Leonard not starting tonight? He's coming off the bench for Los Angeles. That to me is pretty crazy. Like literally, you have Norman Powell starting over Kawhi Leonard. Quite
Probably,
interesting.
load management. He loves some load management.
Love that load management. I mean, last year they load managed so much it didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you want to load manage, got to make sure you make the playoffs. I wouldn't load manage that much in the West.
Yeah, and also, and now is the best time of the year. Now officially, all four pro leagues are in the same time. So, how great is that? The end of October, early November is the peak of all of all sports, American sports fans ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the craziest time of year. That's for sure. And as evidenced by our podcast length, we have so much to go over as well. Didn't even get
Yeah,
to any NFL tonight. The only thing I have to say on that is the Predators can't hold a lead to save their lives. It's the only thing I have to say on the NHL. Unfortunately, they're constant chokers. Hopefully, they figure it out on that part. Um, yeah. That's very, very, very fast. Before we head into soccer topics, um, just a quick NASCAR thing. Jair Logano won at Las Vegas. Huge controversy between Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson. Got a lot of people talking, even from outside of NASCAR, a lot of political stuff. I mean, and just my a very, very quick take here on this. Just the hate for Bubba Wallace is so unwarranted. Like the whole thing to me feels kind of racial. I've been thinking about it. Like Bubba Wallace got on the scene because of the whole news situation at Talladega that didn't turn out to be a news, and now all these people who don't normally watch NASCAR, who wouldn't care about NASCAR otherwise, they just have to talk about it when Bubba Wallace is trending, and it's so annoying. It's so annoying because it feels like you're just doing it because he's the only black driver in NASCAR, and it's just insane. Now, yes, he shouldn't have fought Kyle Larson. He deserves to be suspended for a race. Maybe he should be suspended for the rest of the season. He has to work through a lot of things this off season to I think become a better driver. So you don't lose your cool and wreck a guy because he kind of runs you off. That type of things happens in the race, but it's just kind of insane to me that some of the criticisms, like people have been calling him a thug and everything else. I mean, NASCAR drivers have been wrecking each other since the beginning of the sport. Like this isn't the first time a NASCAR driver has wrecked someone. And what was Matt Kenseth a thug for wrecking Joey Logano a few years ago? Was Dale Earnhardt a thug for knocking Terry Labonte out of the way? No, like and stuff happens. It's racing. It's hard. It's emotional. So you know, I don't know. That's just my quick sense on the Bubba Wallace thing. That's it. It's just ridiculous to see what some people say about him because I think they're just actively rooting against him, and they want to say, "Oh, he's a bust." But hey, he's got 2 wins. He's got a win this year. He's been looking way better this year. I think he's only getting better year by year. Sorry about
yeah,
that, but
yeah. No, I feel like that's true. NASCAR has to rethink a lot of points to make the races more about entertainment, less about controversies, and especially um, things that makes the sport more focused on
yeah.
issues than the sport itself.
What's crazy too is we only have 3 races left this year. Got Miami, Martinsville, and Phoenix, and that's it. So we're obviously and also just too F1's in the country this week. They're in Austin, so lots of racing going on in the country this week. And I believe Brazil's coming up in a few weeks as well for the F1. Their
Oh
Grand
yeah,
Prix.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, Sao Paulo Interlagos.
Yeah, so because they're definitely going to be in Americas here for a little bit. So I haven't really been keeping up with that. I have no idea. I mean, I'm assuming
Oh,
Max is probably winning.
he's a champion already. Mark Verstappen is a champion already.
So
So the championship is decided. Now it's going to be all about the fight for the teams. The scuderias, the Mercedes and Ferrari fighting for the title for team.
yeah. So anyway, as we transition to Brazil, Gus, you wanted to kind of
But
highlight a team from Knoxville as we head into
yeah,
section.
yeah, I know it's not technically a promotion because in order to be promoted, you have to, you know, I mean, in Brazil, we get promotions if you do a good job in the lower division, but in America, it's more about what you do off the field. But anyway, congratulations to the one Knox being promoted to USL one. I believe in the U.S. soccer pyramid is the second division. So I mean, it's big to be in second division. I mean, it doesn't seem big, but from my perspective, it's big being in the. I mean, is it actually the third division? The USL Championship is the second division. My mistake, but still, being that high division is still something big, something massive, and I believe that could be something that makes Knox even bigger as like and they're gonna play at Regal Stadium first, but then after that they're gonna move to the new baseball/soccer stadium downtown Knoxville.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. And it's just awesome to see more soccer teams in East Tennessee. That's what we need because I mean, Chattanooga has our two teams. Good to see Knoxville finally get a team again.
Yeah, I know they've been in the down in the back then was fourth, now it's even fifth division in the NLPS, North American and National Premier Soccer League with the Knoxville and Emerald one team, but congratulations to the one Knox being promoted from fourth division to third division. Here in
Yeah.
Brazil, it's hard to be promoted. It's not easy. It's not easy. I
Aaron
tell
Judge
you,
almost took the lead on a homer, almost, but just was just short.
oof. I guess Houston fans gave chills for that play.
Yeah. Anyway,
But now back to Brazil because yesterday we had the Brazilian Cup final, game two between Flamengo and Corinthians. And the first game was nil-nil, so whoever wins got the title. If it draw went to penalties, Flamengo scored first with Pedro, and Corinthians tied the game with less than 10 minutes remaining with Juliano. Corinthians, Flamengo started really well. They scored first with only 6 minutes, but they could have scored at least two or three more times. They had an offside that was just this short, but it was offside. That nulled the second goal. And Corinthians came strong in the second half. I was expecting Corinthians to be that strong, especially the way Vitor Pereira started the game with three defenders and one right right wing and one left wing player. It was too defensive. I think it made Flamengo more comfortable to be on offense. But then he came back to the formation of the first game: three strikers, three midfielders, and the 4-4-3, and then the team kind of bloomed from there. And also Juliano and Renato Augusto playing together. They play really well together because Renato Augusto felt so overload with being the only like offense midfielder, have to do all the connection between defense and offense. And I feel like Corinthians had, really good second half, but then on penalty kicks, Fagner lost to Corinthians. Léo Pereira lost to Flamengo, and then on the penalty after 4-4 in the first five penalties, it went to like the penalty shootout. When like if you kick good and the other one loses, and vice versa, wins the title. And Fagner, Mateus Vital shot on the post, and Rodinei, of all people, Rodinei scored a penalty kick that gave Flamengo their fourth title in Brazilian Cup: 1990, 2006, 2013, and now 2022 in front of 75,000 fans. That was big. Like, look, the crowd here feel felt big, felt, you know, and I feel like Corinthians fans, they were disappointed, but they were proud of their performance. Everybody thought Flamengo was gonna like destroy Corinthians, especially the way they played in the first half. But again, now it feels like a little bit like bitter because Corinthians now lost their only chance to get a title this year. So Corinthians will not win a title this year. Lost semifinals in Paulista Championship. Lost in Libertadores quarterfinals. In the Brazilian League, they're two further from Palmeiras. 14 points with 6 games remaining. Corinthians actually 7 games because of the whole Goiás game, which is going to be played later. I don't think Corinthians is going to catch up. So Corinthians is going to end the season without a title, but hopefully Vitor Pereira stays. I hope he stays. He's done a terrific job. I feel like now he needs an off season to get players that he truly wants to play because up until now he arrived mid-season and haven't made any signings. So he want to have. I feel like he deserves to have an off season to get players that he wanted to play and make a team truly about him because up at this point he have been playing with players that he got, and he did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, you have to win with the players that you think are going to give yourself the best shot to win. So it sounds like that definitely is helping them do a great job.
But and this title, for Flamengo was huge in order because I feel like it took a pressure off because since Flamengo has started this big dynasty in the last let's 3 years, Flamengo have not won a big title in front of their fans, only like a state championship, but Libertadores, the Brazilian Championship, titles, even the one with the COVID year with no fans, and the one before that was they won the title even with not playing because their opponent lost. They finally won a big title in front of their fans, so I feel like it takes a lot of pressure off of those players, and I feel like it made the Libertadores final way less pressure because I feel like if even if they lose, they're gonna be fine because like we won a title this year in front of our fans, so we're fine. But still, they're a huge favorite over Atlético Paranaense. It's still 9 days away, and but I'll tell you this: Felipão was watching the game on Wednesday and probably find some answers to stop this really dominant and vibrant Flamengo.
Yeah, now the question is, can they translate this to international play? That is the question.
Yeah, that's the question. Because Flamengo now has this game, and then if they win, they're going to go to FIFA Club World Cup. And you know, can they beat Real Madrid? Because they came close to Liverpool in 2019, but can they beat Real Madrid? I don't know. I I think they have more chance in 2019 and 2022, but they still have to play a final with Atlético Paranaense, and Atlético Paranaense has a really veteran coach who have won the Libertadores titles 2 times, and I feel like also Atlético Paranaense has nothing to lose. Their fans are already happy they made it to the finals. They were expecting to make it to the finals, so I think it's going to be a really great Libertadores finals, and I'm glad I'll be able to broadcast this game on radio because it's going to be a really fun game. I feel like both teams don't have any really big pressure. Of course, Flamengo is a favorite, but Flamengo already won a title, and Atlético Paranaense, has nothing to lose. So it's recipe for a great game.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And Libertadores, I mean, it's been a wild topsy-turvy battle for those teams. So, I'm very interested to see who comes out on top.
Yeah, and real quick, week 33 of Brasileirão, Palmeiras should take care of business at home versus Havaí to at least keep their lead to 8 points. But I don't know. Internacional second place plays on the road versus Coritiba. I think they might, tie this game, and then Palmeiras will be again a 10-point lead with only 34, 35, 36, 37, with only 5 weeks left. So I think it's not a matter of who's gonna win the title, but when Palmeiras is gonna win the title.
Yeah, I mean they've been on top this entire year. Like it should be like Verstappen. They'll wrap it up here very soon.
But I don't know. They kind of have struggled in the past 2 weeks with Atletico Goianiense on the road and Palmeiras and Sao Paulo on Sunday. I think the teams, even though they had now a whole week to practice because they're out of any other cup with being out of the Brazilian Cup and Libertadores, I feel like the pressure start caught up to them. The pressure of, oh, you're already the champion. We are just wondering when it's gonna be. But I don't know. I think Abel Ferreira can handle that. In his press conference on Sunday that I was, live watching, he said that he feels confident on his team, that it's normal to have some ups and downs, and especially how hard the Brazilian championship is, and how hard, like, on Sunday, Palmeiras play a big rival. And as a rival, you want to give a hard time, especially with Palmeiras being the heavily favorite. And that was funny. Everybody that I was talking to before that game on Sunday was like, Palmeiras is gonna destroy São Paulo. It's gonna be 3-0, something like 4-0. It's gonna be a lot one side game. Like, I won't say that. It's a rivalry game. São Paulo needs that point to fight Libertadores spot, and I truly feel that Palmeiras has been struggling. Two ties, in the last 2 weeks, but I feel like they're still gonna win, and because also the easy scheduling they have, they face Avaí, which is in the relegation zone. Then they face Atlético Paranaense, which definitely want to rest the starters for Libertadores finals. So they're gonna play like a reserves Atlético Paranaense. Then they play Fortaleza, which probably by this point of the season are gonna be like maybe done. I don't know. They might be fighting for Libertadores spot, but I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna win the next 2 games, and I hope by week 35 they conquer the championship because I'll be live. Hopefully, I'll be live in Allianz Park to broadcast that moment.
Yeah, I certainly hope you are because it's going to be a very exciting moment. Anytime that team has a chance to win a title and you have the chance to be there,
Yeah.
definitely be there. And it's going to be an opportunity that I hope you get.
I already had the privilege to broadcast the state championship for Palmeiras. I couldn't even imagine a Brazilian title.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a difference between the state and the national title.
Oh
That's for
yeah, big difference. But that's it for Brazilian topics. So now it's time for hot takes to wrap up the pod.
Yeah, so I've been kind of alluding to this with the NFL. These primetime games have been horrible, and I think that overall the product for 6 weeks just hasn't been as good as the NFL normally is. It feels like between the last couple of years, where I feel like we've had some really good seasons, a lot of really exciting teams, a lot of really great games. It just feels like this year something feels sluggish, something feels off. Now, granted, for me personally, I might just be me comparing them to the VOLS and comparing to how exciting that is to watch. But I think objectively, when you go online and you see people talk about just they're tired of watching the Denver Broncos play on prime time. They're tired of watching the Chicago Bears on prime time. Yet the NFL still feels like entitled to throwing these teams on prime time every single week. And if I was going back through that first part of this season and looking through the first 6 weeks to look at all the primetime games, just see how many of them are good. And I think like two of them I would consider to be really good games. I know Raiders Chiefs was one, and I would say like maybe Bucks Chiefs, but like that was even a blowout too. Um, the rest of them have been low scoring slugfest, which is not a lot of offense. And I understand not every good game has to be a high scoring in the 40s and 50s, but I expect cleaner football in the NFL than what we've been getting. And I think partially, some of the superstars are aging. Then a lot of the other superstars are really young, so they're still kind of I think they're still kind of developing. Um, but it really feels like that the offenses this year are just really mediocre, and it feels like you just have a lot of teams that just feel the same. Um, and there's just not like creativity in a lot of teams. And really, outside of the Bills and Chiefs, feels like the rest of the teams just kind of merged together. I mean, you got the Eagles, but I don't know. It's just I feel like for like 20 teams, like you could switch uniforms on them and I couldn't tell them apart. It feels like in previous years you could tell like each team apart a bit more clearly and it felt a bit more exciting to see different matchups. This year it doesn't feel the same. And I can't quite put my finger on it.
And I feel like it devalues the league, and I probably that's why the owners are also not happy about it. Is because the the more prime time games that are not interesting, that are uh, football games, the more devalues the league, because those prime time games is where a lot of TV revenue is made because it's a standalone game. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't understand, for example, why Chiefs and Bills weren't prime time if everybody knew was going to be one of the biggest matchups between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Why uh, Panthers and Browns, which at least at week one they seem two viable teams, and Baker Mayfield against his former team, like like college football does this great. They put games that has a lot of at least momentum or narratives to be on prime time. Even Alabama, Texas A&M, they ended up not being a good momentum because of A&M. It made sense to be on prime time because of all the preseason heated arguments between Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, I mean, and you see what having that narrative suggests. I mean, 17 million people at the peak of Alabama Tennessee watched that game. Why? Because we wanted to see if Tennessee could end the 15-year streak against our arch rival. They wanted to see if the streak would end. So I was peeking around time. Arizona just scored again. It's now 35-17. So there you go. We have another blowout on primetime football. I mean, I feel bad for Kirk Herbstreit. He's probably like, man, this is boring. I cannot wait to get back to college football. Um, I mean, it's not these games just haven't been good. And if I'm Roger Goodell, it would give me some pause before I go expanding. I know they were talking about like expanding in an international division and stuff. Um, do we have the talent to fill 32 teams first before we want to go to 36 or 40? Because I mean, think about it. If you do that, that just waters down the league, waters down the product, and you might be getting more than your hand can chew.
Another score update. The Philadelphia Union beat the Cincinnati FC Cincinnati to advance to the Eastern Division, to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, what a Philly! I mean, what a Philly moment! The undefeated Philadelphia Eagles, Phillies in the NLCS, and now the Philadelphia Union into Major League Soccer Conference Final. I mean, the Flyers and the 76ers better keep up that trend.
Yeah, 76ers are 0-2 right now. They just lost to the Bucks tonight after losing to the Nets. Yeah, you're losing to the Celtics in opening night. So not a great start for Doc Rivers and Philly. So, but regardless, still got a long time to get it together. Anyway, what is your hot take, Gus?
My hot take is, unfortunately, Brazilian fans have, I mean, not all, of course, but some fans from Sport and Ceará have acted really disgracefully. Let me give you context. Ceará and Cuiabá were playing at Ceará Stadium, and the game was tied. And by the last, if the 85-minute, the fans just invaded the pitch for no reason. The game was still competitive, and it was frightening. The game, they couldn't continue. And Sport Vasco was even more dramatic because they were both fighting for the fourth spot in the second division promotion zone. Sport was winning. Then on the 91st minute, the Vasco had a penalty. It scored. Vasco players went to the sport fan section, the hardcore fan section, celebrating and provoking. The fans broke out a gate, invaded the pitch, and the game was ended. So I feel like clubs, teams should punish those fans, should ban them to go into the stadiums or gate stadium, or s- do some prosecution, because clearly the teams are going to be fined, or even you know lose not having or lose fan, I'm going to say have games with no fans. So I feel like the team should punish those people, because again, the team can control the reaction of the fans, but they're the ones who are getting punished anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously that's super serious. I mean, we saw what happened last month in Indonesia, right, with dozens and dozens of fatalities and a field storming incident there. Like you can't just let stuff like that happen, especially in situations like that where there are the potential for violence. So, or where there is the potential for violence. So I really do think that you're right on that. We gotta those teams gotta find a way to punish punish those fans and to kind of like try to keep their people in line.
And the thing is like, Brazil had a big problem with that in the 90s and early 2000s. It seemed that it got solved because of hard punishment, but then fans kind of went back, regressed, and came back with those horrible attitudes. So you need harsher punishment again to make an example, because in the past work. I just said that the teams are the ones who are gonna get screwed in the end, because they're gonna get punished by horrible fans, but they can't control the fan reaction.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Uh, I mean that's absolutely right. And obviously, we're not interested in that too. I mean, we saw what happened last year, 1 year ago, with the mustard
yeah,
bottles flying and kneeling. So it's just, and then this past weekend we literally had the fans rush the field, although that was in celebration, and we all kind of laugh and joke about it, right? But yeah, I've heard from on the field, it was kind of dangerous down there. Some people got bruises and everything, but I mean, it's kind of part of the storming the field.
yeah. I mean, and I know it was fun and all, but I can see the point why SEC have to fine, because I mean, you have to give an example of, okay, you guys did something that was supposed to. Here's your punishment. I understand it was a moment of happiness, but imagine if the SEC doesn't punish, and maybe um, down down years later, a fan base starts to get angry and invades the pitch because the team loses, and then what? SEC be like, okay, we didn't punish when the team won, so now it seems hypocritical to punish when they lose.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be consistent about that. So I don't blame the SEC at all. I just think it's kind of a moot point, though, when they're punishment, because any team could pay that fine.
Oh yeah.
So, but anyway, good to have this Bama victory party today.
Yeah. I wish it was a Corinthians too, but yeah, at least we got the Vols.
Yeah, got the balls. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to the 46th episode of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. We're coming back next week. We'll probably know the World Series by then. We'll react to more NFL. We'll get ready for Tennessee, Kentucky, and whatever else is happening in the world of sports in America and Brazil. The only sports podcast talks about sports in both America and Brazil. Y'all have a great evening, great day, or whatever.
Mix up with samba, so yes, y'all.